Hey YouTube, the Gunded 73, making another episode of Knife Talk, and today I'll be talking about Lockbar stabilizers. Now, I have three knives here. Two of them have a form of a Lockbar stabilizer, and one doesn't. Obviously, the Sebenza doesn't. So, basically what a Lockbar stabilizer does is, this is the easier one to show it on. You can see that there's this little disc right here. Obviously, most people know that's the hinderer Lockbar stabilizer, and basically it prevents you from extending your frame lock too far out, So like when you're opening your knife, when you're closing your knife, you can't bend this frame lock out because it hits that little stop. I mean, is it necessary in my opinion? I would say no, simply because, I've never had that happen to me. I've never overextended a frame lock before. Most of them are calibrated to a point where you really can't overextend them. Like once you get past, once you get enough to unlock it, it gets really hard to push it over. The whole logic behind it is that I think Rick Hinder was the first person to put it on a knife. And his logic was coming from a firefighter's perspective, and when you're in the heat of the moment and the adrenaline's pumping, that you're not going to be paying attention. Your body's on overdrive, so you might overextend it. So I don't know if you ever had that happen to him before, but that's why he put that on there. But the hinderer Lockbar stabilizer does two things. The whole point is to prevent wear. So you're not able to move it out this way, but it also prevents you from moving it forward and backward. So it won't move. You can push on that all you want, and it's not going to budge, which is really nice in my opinion. So, it does prevent the lock from wearing out too early, which is very nice. If you're grinding it away like that. So, I'd say the only problem that some people might think is it's a little unsightly. In my opinion, I think it looks cool, but some people might not like the way it looks. They prefer a cleaner look, like on the Sebenza, what have you. And what I think is really cool is Kershaw's frame limiter technology. And basically what they do is, you can see how both of these frame locks are cut pretty wide. You can see the gap. On the tilt, you can see how narrow that frame lock is. You know what I'm saying? Like the cut there is very thin. And they cut it with a wire EDM, which is a really hot piece of thin metal that cuts through this like a hot knife through butter. And what they do is they cut this frame lock, instead of cutting it, like this, they cut it at an angle, so it rubs up against itself. The friction prevents you from overextending it, which is awesome. So you have the effect of the Lockbar stabilizer, but you don't have the, you don't have it there. So there's less parts on it to break, less parts to lose if you ever take the knife apart. You can I'll just zoom up. See, I'm pushing on that as hard as I can, and it's not being overextended. It's really a cool bit of machining and engineering on Kershaw's part. That just one of their engineers is like, hey, what if we did this? And then bam, it's a great idea that achieves the desired effect more simpler. I guess the downside is that you have to machine the knife to a higher tolerance. If the angle of the Lockbar cutout is at anything else, it'll either overextend or it won't close all the way. So the hinderer, I'm guessing the hinderer Lockbar stabilizer is easier and more economical to do. For example, other knives that are cheaper that have this would be like the Kershaw OD1 has a Lockbar stabilizer, the same one. The new Kershaw Cryo, another affordable knife, has this on there. That's also hinderer design, so it makes sense. So basically, it's obviously a much cheaper thing to do. You just mill out a little space for it, you screw it in, and you're done. And then some people like the way it looks. One cool thing you can do with this is you can swap it out. I've seen people use the end of a shell casing, like a 9mm, I think it was. You just cut the end off with like a Dremel, I think, and you just drill through it, through the spent primer, not the unspent primer, not the live primer. And you can just have a shell casing there, or a skull, or whatever. There's some pretty cool things you can do. But I think that's stainless steel, and I like the contrast. Especially when you have the stainless clip and the stainless pivot, and you have this right here. It looks It's just a nice contrast, I think. So, I mean, really, this knife, do frame locks need Lockbar stabilizers? I'd say no. You know, are they nice to have? You know, I'd say yeah. If I had if there was, say, a Sebenza, two Sebenzas and one had one, I'd probably take the Sebenza without it. You know, just because the Sebenza doesn't really need it. But if it was like two ZTO 550s, one was designed without it, one was designed with it, I'd take the one with it, just because to me it makes sense on some designs, and on some designs it doesn't make sense. So, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found that informative, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.